And good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's edition of Branco Broadcast. My name is Bob Branco. Tonight we have with us Janet LaBreck, Commissioner for Rehabilitation Services with the U.S. Department of Education. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. You can give us a brief update of what's going on, and then we will be more than happy to ask you questions all about the rehab services in the U.S.
Sure. Well, again, thank you all for inviting me on the program. It's always a great opportunity to hear from old alumni students that either attended Perkins or have met people along the way around my travels, during my travels around the country. So it's always great to catch up with people again. And so we are the Rehabilitation Services Administration under the U.S. Department of Education. And I have been in this position now since 2013 when the President of the United States nominated me for this particular position. And then I was also confirmed by the U.S. Senate for this actual position. So I had to undergo the confirmation process, just as you hear about in the news when individual candidates are selected by the President, depending on the level of the position. They have to undergo confirmation process for certain positions that give you a certain level of authority. And so for this particular position as Commissioner of the Rehabilitation Services Administration, I am responsible for overseeing all the state agencies, of which there are 80 vocational rehabilitation programs around the country that are responsible for providing vocational rehabilitation services to states, and that also does not include the island and territories as well. So we oversee those programs. So we oversee the Native American programs. We also oversee the client assistance programs, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. The client assistance programs, we have a combination of formula as well as discretionary grants that the states actually apply for to operate their vocational rehabilitation programs. The budget that I'm responsible for operating for all of these programs is a little bit over a $3 billion budget that I'm responsible for, in addition to running programs like the Helen Keller program that we take responsibility for as well. We recently transferred some programs over to Health and Human Services, which included the Independent Living Program. It also included the Assistive Technology Program. And we are still working with the states as well on a wide variety of issues right now. Particularly, we're focused on promulgating regulations under the Rehab Act that Congress has been responsible for giving us a new piece of legislation. Used to be the Workforce Investment Act, and is now the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which changes the regulations and broadens the scope of how individuals with disabilities in our country receive services. So we are working on those regulations now. We also have new partners in that process, which include Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Labor. We also are partners with HUD, and we are working with all of our partners as well, including our partners in the Office of Career Technical Education, Technical Education and Adult Literacy programs under the Department of Education as well. So we are core partners with all of these folks, and we are mandated by Congress to work together to sort of modernize, if you will, the services and supports that individuals with disabilities take advantage of and are certainly able to access under the vocational rehabilitation program.
Okie doke. Does anyone have any questions for Janet?
Yeah, hi.
Can you hear me?
Oh.
All right, go ahead. Is that you, Mike Lance?
Yes, it is. Sorry to be a little late.
go first. Go right ahead.
Okay. Hi, Janet. I'm calling from Miami, Florida. And what I was wondering is, at least years ago they would do this. Why is it that blind agencies try to tell blind people what is realistic for them, what they can and what they can't do? I majored in communications, broadcasting, and the blind agency was kind of against that. And then they asked me, well, what else I wanted to do. I told them maybe agree to or something. And in short, what I'm trying to say is it seems as though that the blind agencies really, I think, if you're not good in communications, like with computers and different things, they don't really have that much for you. What do you suggest to do if you have trouble, let's say, with computers and learning about all this new stuff that's coming out?
Well, first of all, let me just say that because I don't know your specific, communication style, or I don't know what your specific skill sets are and who you had as a counselor, which, doesn't really matter at this point. What is important is that it is critical that you as a consumer, or anyone who is a consumer of a vocational rehabilitation program, to understand that you have the ability to request the services that you need. You also have the responsibility to make sure that when you're making these requests to participate in some sort of job training program or college training program, that the expectation is, and particularly now under the new piece of legislation, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, that the expectation is that when the agencies are working with you, that they're doing it for one sole reason, and that has always been, regardless of what legislation it's under, it has always been with the sole purpose of helping individuals who have a disability, regardless of whether it's blindness or any other disability, to acquire the appropriate skills necessary for you to attain those skills and then go to work. So employment is always the gold standard in terms of what vocational rehabilitation agencies are in place to do, to provide you with the skills, the training, and the ability to access those skills and training, with the outcome expected to be that you will go to work. So if you don't have the skills and communication, then the expectation should be that the agency should help identify for you, by working with you, by trying different types of training skills, by helping you to identify where your strengths are and what some of the limitations are that you may have, what your desires are and your interests and capabilities are for being able to identify a career path that will lead you to employment.
Right.
So, sure, yeah.
Yeah, they've tried a lot.
Janet?
We have another question out there.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a question.
We have a lady first, then Alan. The lady first, and then Alan.
And then I'd like
Can
to
you say your name too?
This is Sue Amateur. Okay. I wasn't sure if I was.
Sue, you're next.
You can hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, Sue. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I have a two-part question, actually. Can you first give us the status of the WIOA regulations?
Yes. Where we are right now in the regulation process is we are nearing the final stages of being able to release the regulations to all of the states for their review. We have stated in the national convening that we held back in January, the expectation is that the regs will be finalized in 2016, and we're targeting at some point in June that the regulations will actually be finalized and be available for viewing. And that what that means is that individual states and individuals and stakeholders will have the opportunity to review the regulations, and they'll be able to see what the new language and how the new regulations will be in place to impact each individual in their respective states.
And do you anticipate that we're still going to meet that June target date?
You know, we are on schedule as of right now, and but understand that it isn't just us in this partnership, that it goes through various stages. So right now we are still saying June of 2016.
Thank you. I'll on my other questions.
Alan, you're next.
Yes, I am from Vermont, and I am curious about the Older Americans Act for those over age 55. At one point, there were monies available for technology and training for disabled older Americans that worked through the vocational rehabilitation departments. Now we're told we're too old to be helped in training with computers or given computers or doing anything that would help the seniors communicate with the outside world and not be shut in. Are there monies available under this Older Americans Act that Voc Rehab is taking and using for themselves and not expending to the seniors?
No, they're not. They wouldn't have the ability to use the money for themselves and not expending it to the seniors. As you know, there is an older blind program, and that the states have access to resources, within that particular program, and there is a requirement, an age requirement, 55 and older, and depending on how the agencies utilize their money and structuring it, individuals can apply to the agencies in order to request those services and supports if it helps to lead you to independence, either in your home or in the community. And so that you should be able to go, to your agency and talk to them about that. And as you know, there are also other programs in the community, rehab programs, as well as there are independent living centers that can help as well with identifying particularly training opportunities where the Voc Rehab Agency, in partnership with the independent living programs or in partnership with other programs that are out in the community, if the VR agency doesn't have resources, can help with identifying those resources. So individuals, for example, if you're living in your home and you're the person that maintains your home and you need assistance with learning computer skills, for example, and you have identified that as a skill or a need that you have, you can certainly go to the agency, because the Voc Rehab agencies, particularly the blindness agencies, also have funding for social services as well. So, and not every state has those monies. It depends on your respective state, and it depends on what the legislature in your respective state appropriates to the vocational rehabilitation program. Massachusetts is a very good example because Massachusetts has a very strong relationship with their local legislature there, and they get supported by their local legislature with state money in addition to federal resources as well. So they can operate a social services program that can help individuals who are older with acquiring the skills, just as you just mentioned, talking about helping to acquire those skills. So you should talk to the folks in Vermont and find out what resources do they have available to help you in that way.
I appreciate what you're saying, but in the last couple of years, Voc Rehab in general has tried to absorb Division of Blind Services, so every penny we get, we have to fight, scrape, crap, and scream to try and get monies. It all seems to go to the mentally retarded or to the spinal cord injured or to the deaf or to other agencies within Voc Rehab, and the blind virtually are getting nothing. So if we feel like we're getting the runaround, can we appeal to your office for help so that you could put the thumb on certain administrators' heads?
Yes. Well, and let me just share with you what our parameters are. So because we are the overseer of the vocational rehabilitation programs around the country, they are required by federal law to adhere to the federal regulations that govern their specific programs. So, for example, if you have an interest in challenging a decision, that has been made about your specific case, you have the opportunity. There is a process that you need to go through, and that process begins with asking the agency for the services. If you disagree with the decision, then you need to, think about your strategy. Why were you turned down? What happened is part of your request. You should always ask for things in writing as well, in terms of, first of all, what your request is. If you're applying for services, if you receive a denial, you always have the opportunity to appeal that decision, not just at one level, but multiple levels. And you need to make sure that you're clear about what it is that you're asking for, that you're ready to engage, and that you indeed plan on participating and completing, the training program as well. There is no endless revolving door, if you will, of services or supports in any agency anymore, whether it's the Voc Rehab program or not. The agencies are required to really justify how they are using their resources, and the expectation is that you, as an individual, whether you're a consumer receiving services or you're a student, that you are actively engaging and that you are moving through the process. So you want to make sure, first of all, that you're ready. You don't always have to agree with a decision that is made. You have the opportunity to appeal it, and you should appeal it because that's your right as an individual to appeal any decision that's made about your case. What happens eventually is, we get calls at RSA from clients that'll say, well, you know what, I'm not getting any services, or my counselor is refusing to open my case. And we have state liaisons, that are assigned to every state. And so when we get those calls, we assign a state liaison to look into what is happening in that state with this individual, or has the individual's rights been violated. There is actually a process that takes place. We have no authority, though, at the federal level to say, for example, contact the state director in your state or any other state to say, you have to do this or we will terminate you, for example. We don't have any jurisdiction over who gets hired at the state level to run the vocational rehabilitation programs, but we do have the authority and the oversight authority of the agencies and how they operate the agencies, and are they doing it within the federal guidelines, so that if you think that they are not doing it or you're not happy with the decision, then yes, you have the right to reach out to us, but you should go through the steps first at the local level, which is your client assistance program, to help with mediating the decision. And a lot of times things get worked out right at that level before they ever get to us.
Thank you for your time. There's others with questions.
Yes, anyone else, please?
Hi, it's Brandy. I have two questions, actually.
All right, Brandy, you're next.
I'll go after Brandy, if you mind.
Huh?
I'd like to
Brandy.
after you, if it's okay.
Oh, sure. Okay, I want to know, in the state of Massachusetts, we have college regulations under the vocational rehabilitation program. How do we get those regulations updated?
You can ask, when you say how do you get them updated,
Yeah.
that they're not updated, or what makes you say that they're not updated?
The last time we had a hearing was 2003
A hearing for
for the college regulations.
You would need to request probably from the current commissioner. And I know that they have taken comments on their college regulations. And I know that their regs have been updated as well. So I don't know to what extent you may or may not have been involved with that process. Have you talked to them there?
No, I have not yet.
Then you need to contact, the agency and say, can you help me with understanding when the last time your college regulations were updated, because they have been updated. And so it may be that you just were not involved with that process. They also post their college regulations online as well. So there are different programs that you can go into on mass.gov to view their various programs that they have there. And they have the regulations there online as well.
Okay.
Hi.
Okay, you had a second question, Brandy?
Yeah. Does the Voc Rehab program have a program for part-time college students?
Yes. Part-time college students under the vocational rehabilitation program have to apply to the Voc Rehab agency just as they would. You need to talk and work with your counselor because it isn't a blanket request as it is for for anyone. The Voc Rehab programs are customized and individualized based on what your needs are and what your strengths and your limitations are. So if there is a need, this is where your negotiation skills come into play with your vocational rehabilitation counselor. So you need to talk to them if you're considering it, but understand also that with the college programs, the programs have a period of time in which you need to be able to complete college, just as it does for any individual student who's going, to college. So you need to be vigilant in terms of looking at what your end result is going to be, because remember, they're sending people to college not specifically so that you can go to college and obtain a degree. You're going to college to obtain a degree with the goal of coming out and getting employment, and that's the expectation.
That's exactly what I'd like to do.
Yes. Okay. So, and the other piece to that, and I'm going to just share this with everyone because there's some things that have been changing lately, and I don't think a lot of people have been that aware of it. And I'm sure you guys have heard about all the discussion, both about the cost of college, but also about the financial literacy piece of attending college today. So students are taking out all kinds of loans they have to take out in order to attend college as well. And understand that if you have defaulted on any previous loans, that it will impact you and your ability to go to college today. If you have unpaid debt, it will impact you. And if you also have unpaid debt, with regard to any student loans, for example, and you went to college, say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but the debt was never paid, you will have an incredible challenge with trying to get access to your transcripts or being able to get back into college. Also, the federal government ties any unpaid debt as well to your ability to get subsidized housing as well in many states. So people, I just want to just share that information with you so that if you're thinking about going to college these days, think about all those points that I just made so that you have a level of awareness and that you can walk into the process fully understanding what you need to do in order to make sure that you're going to be a good, strong candidate to be able to do that, and that you have a vocational goal in mind. So if you want to attend college, what is it you want to attend it for? What is it, what's your goal from getting from point A to point B? If you want to be a teacher, what you need to do in order to become a teacher, because you need to do your homework to be able to understand what all of the implications of saying, I want to be a teacher, because it doesn't just happen, in a vacuum. You need to understand what the process is, and you need to walk yourself through that process and communicate that. And your vocational counselor is supposed to walk through that with you so that you have a good understanding.
All right.
And we had another person after Brandy.
I think I'd like to ask a question.
Brian Capola, go ahead.
Yes. Janet, Janet, this is Brian Capola. I know you probably met me at Perkins.
Yes.
But Janet, this is the question I would like to ask. And now it's turned into two. You said if you don't pay a student loan, it could also have an impact on you, a person getting subsidized housing.
Yes. So here's what happens, because the student loans that people, have taken out, if you owe the federal government, money and you didn't pay it back and it's outstanding loans, then that can have an impact on not only your housing, it will have an impact on your credit for sure. And federal housing, for those people who are looking either to get into subsidized housing, in many cases now, credit checks, background checks, credit checks are given, to see whether or not you're financially stable or financially responsible to get in. So there are all these linkages now where people look at your credit history. They look at your, obviously your loan to debt ratio, that where you, how much money you need versus your ability to pay back, the resources. However, the vocational rehabilitation program, the one good thing about the VR program is that individuals are applying also for grants, but also have the opportunity to be supported by the agency. And as part of those programs, you're required anyway to apply for other financial resources, because the VR agencies are not just the sole provider of the resources. So it isn't your only avenue to apply for student loans. It's another avenue in the event that you don't get the full amount of money that you need, from the vocational rehabilitation programs, depending on the school you choose. And depending on the school you choose and whether you live there on campus, there are a whole bunch of factors that will determine that.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Janet?
The other question.
Brian, one more question, and then we'll go to Jeff.
Yeah, the other question I had, Janet, is how come if a vocational rehabilitation agency, or an agency in itself is doing wrong, Congress does not give you the authority to go in and say, hey, wait a minute. We found that you're doing something wrong, like you're catering to, like you're disproportionately catering to other disabilities instead of the blind and leaving the blind out. How come they don't give that?
We do have the authority as the oversight agency to make sure that those agencies are operating the vocational rehabilitation program. And believe me, we do. We do talk to agencies, when we get calls from consumers, and, the agencies then have to produce, documentation, as well as the individual that's voicing their concern. We do have that authority to make sure that the agencies are complying with the federal regulations. Where we do not have the authority is what I said earlier, is we do not have the authority from a personnel perspective to ask the state director, for example, to step down from their positions. That's not within our authority. But we absolutely do have the authority to make sure that they are operating the program. And we issue monitoring as well. So vocational rehabilitation agencies are monitored by us to ensure that they are complying with the regulations and to ensure that the resources are being spent in a fiscally responsible way. We do complete fiscal audits, all of those kinds of things we do. So we do have that authority. We just don't have authority over the direct personnel. They're hired at the state level by the
So in other
state.
words, if they're not following, you can you can take some federal money away from them.
You know, when states are not using funds in the way that the federal government has intended those funds to be utilized. So, for example, if they're entering into a partnership with somebody else where VR consumers are not getting the money and the money may be going someplace else, then we come in. There's a whole process that happens. We come in and we can take money back, yes, from the states. Yes, so absolutely.
You answered my question, Janet LaBreck.
All right, we go to Jeff Friedlander and everyone else. Please make sure you're still muted with your phones. Go ahead, Jeff.
Janet.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey Friedlander from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I'm sure we met at some point in time. But anyway, if the question is, whether if the agency gives you, let's say you need a computer to do whatever job you're going to do, after training, is the client required to pay the agency back for the, once the client gets a job, once he gets the equipment.
So are you asking me if the agency buys you a computer, are you required to pay them back for the purchase of the computer?
Yes, once you get a job, but like so much a month, they ask you how much can you afford to pay each month.
Did that happen to you?
No, I was just asking. I'll tell you why I asked that. I owed at one time, I don't know if you have anything, Social Security, when I reapplied, I owed them $6,000 in addition to what I had sent back from making too much money. So at that time, it was 21 years ago, I paid them $167 a month for 3 years. That's why
that's what you're saying. That's why you're asking the question. No, it's not the same. I should tell you that some states do have a means test, what's called a means test, and they are within their legal rights to ask individuals and to require that individuals who fall within certain financial categories to receive, with the objective of receiving services, that states can ask for a contribution towards the cost of the services. But if you, for example, were issued a computer, for example, as part of your training program, or if you were sent to a training program to learn computer skills, for example, depending on whether or not you meet that means test, if your state has a means test within it, it might mean you may have to contribute something towards the training. But if they grant you or issue you a computer and they don't have a means test or anything, you're not requested to pay that money back. And there are lots of programs now out there as well that offer used computers to people who may have a need for a computer as well. And many of the states partner with a wide range of different programs like that in their respective states as part of a resource. But no, agencies can institute a means test. Not every state does that, and some of that's based on whether or not they get enough money at the state level to be able to provide the services and supports for everyone.
Now, you don't know if Ohio has a means. Yeah, how could you find out if the state has a means test? Like, for example, you can
ask.
Yeah, Janet.
Thanks.
Okay. You all set, Jeff? All right, Steve.
Yeah, I have a kind of observation question. I find that, like, for subsidized housing and working, like, it's kind of like a black and white. Like, you make too much money and you're out, which I understand everyone wants to, but I think there's a transitional, like a lot of people are concerned, like, okay, I get this job, but what happens in 6 months if I lose my job? Then I have to reapply for housing. Am I going to be homeless? I mean, I've heard a lot of people express these thoughts to me over the years, and I think some people are like, well, I don't want to leave subsidized housing because it's comfortable and change is difficult, and there's not, like, I've known some people in those situations where it's like they didn't qualify for housing, but they didn't have, they were kind of in transitional, in the middle, falling through the cracks, I guess we could say. Is that considered at all?
It is considered, and those are, there are a wide range of different supports now that are available. So, for example, one of the reasons why Health and Human Services has become a mandated core partner under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is to address issues like this. So they are at the table with us because they operate the TANF programs.
The what program?
So Transitional Assistance for Needy Families. It's TANF, it's called.
TANF, okay.
And TANF, every state has a TANF program. And individuals, so for example, who may be in transition, looking for employment or trying to get off of public assistance programs in some way, if you're female and you are pregnant or you have a child and you're trying to get yourself into a work program, there are other supports that are available that do not jeopardize your housing as long as you're engaged in some type of training program. So, we always tell people take a look at that. Also, under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, there are multiple opportunities for including individuals with disabilities, to be considered for other job training programs also, even outside of the vocational rehabilitation programs such as the workforce development system. So there are mechanisms in place, and absolutely, we call that the cliff, that individuals are worried about the fact that they will lose their mass health for their Medicaid, benefits, or they're worried that they're going to lose their housing, or they're worried that if they get a job and earn too much money, then they're going to get kicked off of SSI or SSDI, benefits, that they'll reach that level that knocks them off of the benefits. But there are mechanisms now, and those agencies are also working on regulations and looking at modernizing their own rules and regulations as well to address some of these issues that you just raised, because those are very, very important issues.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. Go right ahead.
I'm so sorry. This is my first time doing this, and I keep forgetting. I think I'm muted, and I'm not. I apologize if I've been disruptive. This is Susan, and I just wanted to make sure he's finished with his question because I wanted to make sure I was unmuted.
You're unmuted, Steve. Are you finished with your question?
Yes, thank you, Janet.
All right, then we'll go to Susan.
Okay, thanks. Hi. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, for a little background, my husband is an assistive technology instructor in California, and I'm working on a program that fortunately his clients have allowed me to shadow a lot of their classes. And there are some things that, as a student, my mentor and I are working on a project out here, and I'm just wondering about a couple of things. One is that I don't know if this is under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act that you mentioned, but we were told that from the federal level, what a lot of people refer to as the homemakers programs will be discontinued effective June 30th. Sometimes they refer to that as oh my goodness, some people didn't like homemakers programs, so I think they called it the environmental engineers or something. I can't remember exactly, but they really went all out for this title. But it was basically, it's for people who lose their vision later in life. They're not necessarily blind from an early age, but especially RP or something, glaucoma, something later that may happen. And so there is sort of the transitional stage that the people need to learn skills before they would go into the ultimate goal, which would be, of course, employment. The end result, of course, the reason that the rehab program's there. First of all, can you tell me if you're aware of this type of program being discontinued?
I think, yes, I definitely am. There have been some federal changes that Congress has mandated as part of the changes in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that were not in the previous act, and they changed some definitions. We are working on those right now as part of the regulatory process, so legally I cannot discuss it with you until we get through the end of the process, but we are working on that.
When you say working on it, just for clarification, and I'm not asking you to discuss it, I promise. I just mean...
when I say working on it, we are addressing it as part of the regulatory process. We are addressing what Congress is asking us to do.
Okay, so this is actually, just for clarification, is coming from Congress.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you so much. Because
any of these changes do not come from us.
Okay, because I really appreciate you answering that, because a lot of the people that we both have that we're working with them, they're terrified because I'm sure you're aware there's that sort of transitional period there between losing one sight and basically my position is I'm working as a person who, for lack of a better term, helps a person adjust to that loss. And it's sort of, okay, let's help you grieve for the life you lost and get ready to start life as a blind person. A lot of people aren't ready to be blind, and so they're really afraid to have that taken away from them. And
absolutely.
It's a big, and unfortunately, if it goes, the way that they think it's going to immediately and with very little warning, we've got several people who are just going to be sort of out there. And that's why I'm doing the talking, so I don't have to ask you to say anything because I understand you can't. But it's sort of, they're really afraid and they're terrified, and they're coming to both of us, my husband and myself, and they're saying, "Hey, what do we do?" And mine is a little bit different because I just have to work with them individually, but he works with his company. His company works through DOR or Rehab out here, and so.
Yes.
Right, and so they're the ones who they're getting it, they're just saying it's coming down from RSA, that, that particular part of it will be gone, never to be seen again, thrown into the abyss, whatever we want to call it. And so I just kind of wanted to make sure that there was something, and that's what you said.
Yeah, and we are working, yes, and as I said, we are working on looking at that particular issue as well as other issues that are within the regulations, but it does not, no changes in regulations come down from RSA. We implement the regulations based on what Congress writes in the law, and that's how it always works for any agency, any federal agency.
Understood.
So, if we get a mandate from Congress, our job is to write the regulations based on how Congress wrote it. It isn't always right in terms of, how we may feel about it. It is, and the impact may be very different, and it may require changes, but one of the things that I always say to all of you as well as to others is that you are the stakeholders, you are the recipients of these programs, so that when you see something that you feel is so substantially different, and has the potential to have an adverse effect on a population of people,
yes,
then you as individuals are the stakeholders, and you have the ability and the right, to talk to your local legislators to let them know how you feel about it, because you're the ones that hold the key.
Okay,
we're going to move on to another person now. Anybody else?
Sorry.
Bob, I have a question.
Go right ahead. Terry, is that you?
Okay, this is Terry. Susan, first a quick comment. I totally understand where you're coming from. I lost my sight from glaucoma at 22. Question. Janet, did you or did you not say, or did I hear you in a different way? We have sort of a thing here in British Columbia where if somebody gets a job and they've been on the disability income, which I guess is equivalent to your SSI or SSDI, thank God I won't be on that no more. It's sort of a years you're on it and you get so much a month, and then when you get a job you get a little bit, so much taken off as you earn money, and your medical is still covered as you earn money, and that is slowly taken. I think you get to keep the medical for that year or into the next year. I'm not sure. But is that how that works down there in the States?
It is, but don't forget now we have Affordable Care Act in the U.S. as well, and that individuals can be covered under the Affordable Care Act as well. But automatically, depending on which program you're on in the U.S., individuals have certain offsets that they can apply towards some of the expenses that are important for individuals who are blind, for example, to go to work. So expenses that are related to transportation, expenses that are, related to helping the individual to do their job. They can set up programs with Social Security Administration in order to offset some of those. I'm sorry?
Okay, how would that work if someone were to move down to the States and had all their whatever in order and everything like that, and they went down there for employment?
Well, if you move to the United States to establish residency, you would need to establish residency, here.
Yes.
You would need to, go and apply on, for the various programs, obviously. You would need to get yourself linked up and make sure you're established and that you're going to be able to benefit, from the program. But understand it takes a long time. It's not an easy process.
Don't you have to be a citizen for that?
I've heard that from a friend of mine.
Yes. So you need to, be cautious about just leaping.
Yeah. I'm just saying hypothetically, if someone...
Yeah, it takes a while. It can be, depending on what your goals and objectives are and how you establish your citizenship, because if you're not a citizen also of the United States, you need to establish a sponsorship also, and you're not eligible right away for SSI, benefits. So you would need to be able to establish the sponsor, someone who is going to sponsor you, while you're here, and that takes, I believe, it's 5 years in order before you can just get onto the program.
All right. Anybody else that hasn't asked a question yet?
Yeah, Bob.
Thank you.
Don Bowden.
Okay. Hi, Janet. I'm from Worcester, Mass. And my question, you may or may not have heard about this, but this has to do with HUD. This morning, I got up and I had the radio on, and I only heard bits and pieces of this report. I wish the heck I heard the whole thing. But I heard that President Obama was considering signing an executive order which would bypass Congress, to have Section 8 tenants move from the inner cities out to the suburbs. Now, have you heard anything like this?
There has been discussion, but understand that even talking about putting together an executive order, first of all, it takes a while. There's a lot of, back and forth that needs to happen as well. So it's not anything that's in place. But I think that the ongoing discussion has to do with looking at the limited number of subsidized housing that has been available for individuals to take advantage of. The waiting lists are incredibly long for families and individuals to get into subsidized housing, and there's limited stock available, stock meaning houses or apartments that are available for individuals who need subsidized housing. And so they're talking about expanding, opening up more opportunities in suburbs and offering the opportunity for developers to look at constructing as well as looking at building out and changing out how the housing, first of all, becomes available, and also looking at increasing the number of subsidized housing that is available to individuals as well as their families.
Well, what I was kind of worried about is this talk show host was talking about forcing Section 8 tenants who are already tenants, forcing them out to live in the suburbs. That would be a nightmare.
Oh, yeah. Well, particularly if you're thinking about people with disabilities in terms of having access to things like transportation, but not only for people with disabilities, but, there are individuals who, and families who are in this inner city because they have access to transportation, regardless of whether you have a disability or not. Not everybody owns a car, and not every suburb has access to bus transportation or any other kind of public transportation. So, I didn't hear the show, so I'm not sure, the frame of reference that the talk show host is using that in.
All right. We want to move. We've got time for maybe 3 more. Who's next? Anybody? Anybody else?
Sorry.
I have a question.
Who's this?
My name is Gracie.
Go ahead,
I'm
Gracie.
in Indiana. I have a question. I don't know. Hello, Janice. How are you? Thank you so much for your informative information.
Good. Gracie, did you say you're from Louisiana?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. I had a question in reference to sales. I came on the call late, so I don't know if you talked about maybe the partnership and the change in HHS with the Centers for Independent Living and Rehab Services. Did you address that at all?
Yes, in the beginning.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
You probably weren't on the call, but I did say that the Rehabilitation Services Administration used to administer the independent living program, and that the program moved over to HHS, which is now being administered by them in terms of we've completed that transition process, so that program now lies within the ACL administration under HHS. So yes.
Right. Okay. My question though is, when individuals are in need of a service, individuals who are blind, and they're not being served by that particular seal, then what is the recourse?
The recourse is exactly as it is for the vocational rehabilitation program. So if you have a need for a service that you feel that you can benefit from an independent living agency or any other agency, you need to first of all make that need known to them, request the service, and if you're feeling as though your needs are not being met, then you have the right to appeal that decision as well, and you can use the client assistance program as well for appealing the decision or helping to understand why it is that you're not able to access, the service. Sometimes, depending on what the service may be, if it's a service that they don't have access to or have the skills to provide, then, it may mean that they need help with getting access to it or partnering with somebody else who can help provide that service to you through the Independent Living Center. But you should absolutely appeal the decision.
Okay.
One more question.
Thank you.
I have one more. Under Voc Rehab, Janet.
Asked one yet. Anyone that hasn't asked one yet? We have Marcy, Lauren, Joe, Karen. Anybody that hasn't asked one yet? Joni, this is your chance first. Otherwise, we'll go to Alan. All right, we'll go to Alan.
Under the Voc Rehab, there is that social and rehabilitation program. How much is it mandated that the SR program is funded? And what are those monies specifically used for especially for those 55 and older who are not necessarily looking for employment?
Alan, just to refresh my memory, are you from Massachusetts?
I'm from Vermont.
Vermont, okay. So the social rehab funds usually come from the state level. So depending on what state you are, depending on how much funds the state legislature appropriates for that particular agency for social rehab funds, then the agency uses those funds to provide services, social rehab services, for those populations of individuals who are not going to work. And that doesn't mean, though, that individuals, say, for example, who may be 55 and who may be newly blind and may need some initial supports and skill building and confidence building, and they need to get orientation and mobility, for example. They need some technology training under the social rehab, section. Depending on what services and supports that individual needs, it doesn't necessarily mean they cannot go to work. It might mean that they need those preliminary services to help get them to the point where they are able to work, or it also might mean that you as an individual have decided, I'm not interested in going back to work. I want to be able to maintain my household, better. I want to learn skills in order to go to work. But I want to first be able to do this. So it might mean, that there are different level of supports and services that may come from a range of different funding sources to be able to help you do that. It also means that the agency also has the ability to partner at the local level to help get you some of those services as well. So for each state, it depends on how much money they're getting from from their own state legislatures to appropriate the social rehab funds.
So we would need to advocate then to the Ways and Means and Appropriation Committees within our legislature to see to that the necessary funds are placed in SR.
You can do that, and you can work with your Voc Rehab agency to say, hey, you know what? We really believe, particularly if you're working, with your SRC, your State Rehab Council, we really believe that there needs to be more money appropriated for and utilized on behalf of individuals who need social rehab services. And we want to, lobby the legislature. We want to make our legislators make it known to them that we have an interest in this particular area. Then you would need to work with your state agency to be able to have that discussion and put together a plan for being able to lobby for specific, they call that earmarks, where you may potentially get a certain portion of money that could be used for specific reasons, specific training, If you want it for 55 and older, then you can talk to your legislature. You'd have to demonstrate, first of all, that there is a need, that there's a demand for it. You'd have to work with your agency to get information from them to find out about how much resources do you have, how much more resources do you need, how much was appropriated to you last year by your local legislature, and what are you going to do with the funds, and how can you show the legislature that the money that you use and that they appropriate to that agency will be spent in this way, and that will mean these individuals can achieve this. Whatever this is, this is what these individuals will be able to achieve. So you need to be able to tell your story in a way that the legislature will agree with you that, yes, we will give you, $1 million, more, to be able to provide computer training for individuals who are 55 and over.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate your being here today.
Janet, for those people on the call who don't have time to ask your question, and for those of us who have already done so, could you give out any contact information in case people have questions of you in the future and they can have their answers?
Yes. So my email address is Janet, and that's JANET .LaBreck, LAB as in Bravo, RE as in Echo, C as in Charlie, K as in King, at E as in Echo, D as in David, and then .gov.
Oh, that's easy.
And now what about
at ed.gov.
At ed.gov.
I mean, those who don't have, but those who don't have computers or email or.
Oh, if you don't send whatever you do, don't send me a letter. It goes through screenings and it gets irradiated for anthrax and everything else. So by the time I get it, it's 2 months later, and it's very.
Could you just give us the contact phone number for RSA?
Let me give you.
It'd be a 202.
Yes, it's 202.
Yeah.
245.
Yeah.
7596.
7596.
Play phone tag.
That's the phone contact. Now that's not my phone contact. That's my assistant, Eric Gallup.
Jeff, I'll find you and I'll send your email for you. This is Susan.
Oh, Susan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can I do that?
Susan.
Can I send an email on his behalf?
Okay. Sure. Yeah. What's her name again? Is Sue Amateur?
No, this is Susan. This is Susan who's on the ship with you, silly. I'll send your email for you. I'll get a hold of you.
Oh yeah. That's Susan Brewer.
It's Wong. My
Susan
last name is Wong.
Well, I just wanted to thank Janet for appearing this evening. Janet, thanks for taking your valuable time and sharing with us what's going on and keeping us abreast of the situation nationally with rehab services. It's been a real pleasure having you with us.
Yeah. You did
who's the guest speaker next week? Next Monday.
Well, next week we're going to have Joe Smith. She'll be talking about Rainbow International. Janet, thanks again for appearing on Branco.
You're very
Broadcast.
welcome. Great.
Thank you so much. You've been really helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye, Janet.
And thank you, Bob.